After a lifetime of quiet devotion, Helen Ashcroft's world was turned upside down when, while sorting through her late husband Robert's belongings, she discovered a locked wooden box hidden behind a false wall in his study. Inside, she found a loaded gun and surveillance photos, images of herself captured over decades, evidence that someone had been watching her all along. Before we dive into this story of secrets, betrayal, and the lengths one man went to protect the woman he loved, let us know where you're watching from. And if you believe in the power of truth to conquer even the most carefully guarded deceptions, please like this story and subscribe for more. Helen Ashcroft had never thought of herself as someone who courted intrigue. At 68, she considered her life ordinary in most ways. She lived on a quiet street in southwest London, occupying a tidy semi-detached house with a small front garden and a larger backyard that sloped toward a fence lined with rose bushes. For nearly 40 years, she had shared that home with her husband, Robert Ashcroft, a calm, methodical, fiercely private man. Their marriage was not the fairy tale of romance novels. It was, in many ways, a tranquil partnership. They rose early, read the newspaper side by side, chatted about their day's tasks, and fell asleep to the gentle hum of the radio. Helen believed she knew Robert's every quirk, from the exact way he liked his tea to his tendency to stay up reading spy novels. But now Robert was gone, struck by an abrupt heart attack at 72. The cruelty of it took her breath away. He had seemed so steady, so healthy, always mindful of his diet and daily walks. She recalled the paramedics telling her he might have had an underlying condition, and she could only stare at them, hollowed by loss. In the days that followed, a swirl of condolence cards and funeral arrangements overtook her life. Neighbors stopped by with casseroles. Old friends telephoned from afar to express shock and sorrow. Helen, stoic at the best of times, moved through it all in a haze, acknowledging that eventually she must face a life without him. 3 weeks passed, and the funeral concluded in somber grace. Suddenly, a hush fell over Helen's daily existence. She found herself in an empty house that no longer felt like home. Late at night, she glanced toward Robert's reading chair, half expecting to see him with a well-thumbed book. Yet the chair stayed vacant. The finality pressed upon her with a mournful weight. And so, in that mixture of numbness and heartbreak, she resolved to sort through Robert's study, a room she had rarely entered in all their years together. He had always maintained it meticulously, and she respected his space. One drizzly morning, Helen carried a vacuum cleaner upstairs, determined to clean the study. She paused at the threshold, inhaling the faint scent of old paper and polished wood. She took a slow inventory of the shelves lined with volumes on world history, economics, and foreign languages. Robert's treasured desk, an antique oak piece with multiple drawers, stood as a silent sentinel of his presence. She recalled how he would vanish in here for hours, claiming to catch up on work from Berlin days. But Helen never pressed him for details. That was part of their unspoken agreement. If he did not wish to talk about the past, she would not pry. She began dusting the shelves, each worn hardcover a reminder of his wide-reaching intellect. Then, at the back of the study closet, hidden behind a stack of old files, she noticed a small wooden box. She might have overlooked it if it were not for the dusty corner that protruded slightly. Curious, she brushed away the cobwebs, discovering the box had a simple latch but no obvious lock. In faded letters across the top, she discerned her own name, Helen, carefully written. Her breath caught. Robert had never mentioned a box for her. Why hide it away? Pulse quickening, she opened the latch. The lid creaked, revealing soft cloth folded inside. She lifted the cloth, hands trembling. Beneath lay a loaded gun, a handgun that looked well-maintained, though antique in style. Shock flared through her. Robert had kept a gun in their home? She had never suspected he even owned a weapon. She set it aside with caution, heart thudding. Deeper in the box lay a thick envelope stuffed with black and white photographs. She eased it open, sifting through the images. Her mouth went dry. Every photo was of her. Walking to work decades ago, waiting at a bus stop, strolling through a local park, even glimpses of her at a grocery store. Some pictures were more recent, capturing her in the 2000s with subtle lines of age. She recognized angles that could only come from zoom lenses, hidden vantage points. This was surveillance, not a personal photo album. Her mind reeled with questions. Who had taken these pictures? Why did Robert store them so carefully? Her life was always unremarkable. She was a translator in her early years, then shifted to administrative work at an international trade office in central London. She had never suspected that someone might watch her. And Robert, had he known she was being watched? Or had he been the one behind the camera? The possibility unsettled her to the core. She closed the box, breath unsteady, fear creeping in. The realization that everything she believed about her marriage could be false set her stomach roiling. She tried to rationalize. Perhaps Robert found these photos for some private reason. Maybe he rescued them from an unknown threat. But the gun? That implied danger. She hurried downstairs, eyes flicking about the house as though new secrets might lurk in corners. She brewed a cup of tea, but her hands shook, sloshing hot liquid onto the counter. Unable to let it rest, she returned to the study. She checked each drawer meticulously, rummaging through old receipts, notes, and foreign postcards. That was when she noticed a small metal key taped under the middle drawer. It was shaped differently from typical house keys, somewhat older. Her heart fluttered with a sense of discovery. She scanned the room for anything locked. Then she remembered the basement, a space where Robert stored utility tools. There was a battered old cabinet that might have had a lock once, or a safe. She had seldom ventured down there, being content to let Robert handle any fix-it tasks. Armed with the key, she navigated the cluttered basement, boxes of holiday decorations, a dusty workbench, and an old trunk. In the corner, half concealed by stacked chairs, was a small steel safe. She knelt, noting the keyhole that matched her new find. With a click, it opened. Inside lay documents in multiple languages, crisp currency from several countries, pounds, euros, even old German marks, stacked in tidy bundles, along with a list of names typed on yellowing paper. Many names were crossed out in pen, some circled. She recognized none except for the last, which read William Everett in neat print, uncrossed. Alongside it, faintly penciled, was Army Buddy. Helen's pulse hammered. The secret box with photographs, the gun, and now this stash of foreign money and cryptic documents. She felt as though she'd stepped into a spy novel. Her mind leapt with speculation. Had Robert led a double life? Could he have been involved in espionage? It seemed ludicrous, but the evidence was right before her. She struggled to connect the calm, meticulous man she married with this covert persona. He had spent time in Berlin during the Cold War, claiming to work in communications and logistics. She had never pried. Now she realized that might have been a cover story. Perhaps he was an intelligence officer? She carefully replaced the items, chest tight with fear and betrayal. Even if Robert's motives were good, he had hidden so much. The name William Everett stood out. If Robert referred to him as an army buddy, maybe he could clarify what was going on. Helen gathered her courage and sought to track him down. She spent an entire day making phone calls, starting with old phone directories, searching online records, sifting through genealogical websites. Finally, she found a listing for a William G. Everett in an assisted living facility in Maryland, United States. The age matched what she expected for one of Robert's old acquaintances. Despite a swirl of doubts, Helen dialed the number for the facility. Her voice quivered as she asked if a William Everett was a resident. The staff confirmed he was, but they were reluctant to share details. Helen explained she was calling from London, that she had important personal matters regarding her late husband, Robert Ashcroft. The staff told her William was somewhat reclusive, but they'd pass on the message. Days later, she received a call from William himself. His voice, gruff and time-worn, said, "I've been waiting for this call, though I hoped it might never come." That cryptic response set her heart racing. He invited her to visit if she wished to learn the truth. Without fully understanding why, Helen booked a flight to Maryland. She packed lightly, mind spinning with anxious questions. She told her neighbor she'd be gone for a week, not revealing the bizarre reasons. When she arrived at the assisted living home, a modest building tucked in suburban calm, she felt a jolt of unreality. The staff directed her to William's room. He greeted her from an armchair, his posture stooped, eyes sharp despite the wrinkles and silver hair. The moment she said, "I'm Robert Ashcroft's wife," his expression flickered with recognition and sorrow. He gestured for her to sit, sighing as if releasing a long-held breath. Helen launched into the story of the locked box, the surveillance photos, the hidden safe, the suspicious items. William listened without interrupting, face drawn. When she finished, he spoke, voice husky. "Helen, your husband was never a simple communications officer. He was an intelligence operative stationed in Berlin during the Cold War. He was a damn good one, too." Helen's stomach swooped. She stared at him. The reality of hearing it confirmed sent her mind whirling. "What do you mean?" she breathed. William folded his hands, gazed distant as he recounted. Robert's actual mission was infiltration. The agency had identified a suspected East German spy ring that was believed to be operating in London and Vienna, using unsuspecting civilians as couriers for microfilm or coded documents. Helen's role? The ring had apparently targeted her, a young translator with wide international contacts. They planned to approach or manipulate her into unknowingly aiding them. Robert's job was to insert himself into her life, gain her trust, and watch if she fell under the spy network's influence. The plan was that Robert would marry her if necessary. But he fell genuinely in love. That changed everything. Helen sat, stunned, tears burning her eyes. She remembered meeting Robert in her 20s. He was unassuming, polite, always ready with a witty remark or a kind gesture. She thought it was a chance meeting. He had told her he worked in logistics. She recalled how swiftly their relationship blossomed, leading to marriage within 2 years. She had no inkling that behind the scenes, Robert was reporting to an agency, observing her, ensuring she didn't unknowingly slip into a spy ring. She felt a swirl of anger, heartbreak, and a reluctant sense of awe at how thoroughly he'd hidden it. William pressed on. "Robert tried to withdraw from the assignment once he realized he truly loved you," he said heavily. "But the agency refused. They needed him close to you. If you became a target, he was to feed them any intel. But Robert refused to put you in danger. Eventually, he was cut off, burned as an asset, left to fend for himself with the threat of that spy network still looming. That's why he hid so many details. He feared they'd come after you if they discovered he was no longer aligned with them." Helen listened, tears trailing down her cheeks. All those years of marriage, the small fleeting moments when Robert seemed tense or watchful, he had been protecting her. She felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Grief at the deception, gratitude for his loyalty, rage at the agency's moral compromise. "Why didn't he tell me once we were safe?" she whispered. William exhaled. He believed it was never truly safe. So he stayed vigilant, tracking the network's remnants, receiving threats to keep him silent. He was sure if you knew, it might put you in more danger. He protected you the best way he could. The conversation ended with William pressing an old envelope into her hand. "This was meant for you if anything happened to me first, or if you discovered the truth. It's not from Robert. These are some notes I compiled about your situation, from my own knowledge. If it helps you find closure, read it." Helen clutched it, choking out a thank you. Before she left, she asked if the threat was still real. William shrugged, sorrow in his eyes. "I can't be certain. The Cold War ended, but old grudges die hard. Some of them might be out there still." Returning to London, Helen felt shell-shocked. She spent nights reading and rereading William's notes. They corroborated everything. References to Robert's time in Berlin, his infiltration assignment, coded messages he'd hidden away. She discovered details of how he quietly dismantled pieces of the spy ring, eliminating their influence, but always aware a few members evaded capture. She realized the black and white photos of her might have been taken by the network, or even by Robert's associates. She couldn't be sure. All she knew was that he had them as proof, or to remind himself how closely she had been watched. In the swirl of these revelations, She came home one evening to find a plain envelope slipped through her letterbox. No return address. She opened it to see a recent photograph. Helen and Robert at a cafe, just 6 months before his death. It was taken from a distance, capturing them laughing over coffee. On the back of the photo, someone had scrawled, "He's gone. You're not." A cold sweat drenched Helen's back. This was a direct threat, confirming that the watchers were still out there. They knew Robert was dead, and they were telling her they hadn't forgotten her role in this decades-old chess game. Panicking, Helen contacted the local police. She tried to explain, but they were skeptical until she mentioned the name William Everett, old spy networks, and the photographic evidence. She insisted they talk to him for verification. Slowly, the wheels turned. Eventually, a small intelligence task force invited her in for questioning. She brought Robert's documents, the safe contents, the currency, the surveillance photos, even the gun. They listened, flipping through evidence, trading grim looks. As the discussion progressed, Helen realized these officials believed her, if only because William Everett's name carried weight in certain circles. They recognized some references in the documents to old code names from the 1980s, partially declassified. They concluded that remnants of that East German network might remain, now repurposed for other criminal or espionage activities. Helen found herself in a surreal new reality. Government agents visited her home, scanning for bugs or cameras. They informed her that, for the time being, she was under protective watch. She felt an odd mixture of fear and relief. In her wildest dreams, she never imagined she'd be living out a spy thriller in her golden years. She kept thinking of Robert, how he must have carried this burden alone. Days passed, and the intelligence task force, guided by some of Robert's old intel, discovered leads pointing to 2 potential suspects. They believed these individuals, rumored dead or hidden, had resumed covert activities in Europe. One was rumored to have penetrated a British diplomatic channel under a false identity. The other had married into an influential family, laundering money quietly for decades. Helen was stunned that these pieces fit so easily, like a puzzle whose final piece was Robert's hidden archives. She realized now why Robert had always seemed cautious about them traveling to certain places. He was protecting her from a threat that lingered. With this new vantage, the authorities proposed a plan, one that made Helen's pulse race with apprehension. They wanted to use her as bait, carefully and with her consent. The logic was that if the old network believed they still had an interest in her, or that she was a loose end, they might surface. Helen was horrified at first, but after days of debate with herself, she agreed. She felt it was the only way to ensure no other naive soul would be targeted. She also wanted to see justice for Robert, who spent years looking over his shoulder. This time, she wouldn't be in the dark. She would step forward with eyes open, flanked by professionals who wouldn't discard her like Robert had been discarded. In the lead-up to the sting, Helen learned self-protective measures. An agent named Lucy, a sharp and empathetic woman, was assigned as Helen's close contact. Lucy explained the plan. They'd feed a rumor that Helen had discovered valuable microfilm from Robert's estate, referencing a hidden stash. Lucy gave Helen a coded phone script to read if suspicious calls came. Meanwhile, Helen wore a discreet wire whenever leaving the house, in case an approach occurred in public. The entire operation hinged on the premise that the old foes would attempt to retrieve or silence Helen, confirming their identities. The tension built over weeks. Helen felt the stress gnaw at her. She could not confide in friends or neighbors. She felt lonely, longing for Robert's calming presence. Each night, she stood by the window, recalling the contentment they once shared. She mused how ironically, he had always been a guardian of her life, and now she was continuing the fight he began. She discovered a strange courage blossoming inside her, spurred by anger at the network's cruelty. They had threatened her, haunted her husband, stolen decades of his peace. She refused to let them slip away. Finally, the moment came. A cryptic phone call reached Helen, an unknown voice with a faint European accent, asking about Robert's documents. Helen followed the script provided by Lucy, feigning confusion but hinting she had found something. The voice insisted on meeting. Ms. Delaney's heart pounded as she arranged a time and place, a public cafe. Lucy and her team established discreet coverage. They placed covert watchers among the cafe patrons, set up nearby vehicles. They told Helen to remain calm, keep the wire active, and prolong conversation until the suspect either confessed or threatened her, giving probable cause for arrest. On a misty morning, Helen walked into the cafe, nerves dancing. She wore a plain coat, her posture stiff. Lucy sat a few tables away, disguised as a casual customer, scanning over a magazine. The suspect arrived, a middle-aged man in an expensive suit. He slid into the chair opposite Helen, greeting her with an unsettling smile. "Mrs. Ashcroft," he said, voice soft. "We finally meet." She forced a smile, heart hammering. He asked about the rumored microfilm, leaning forward in a menacing hush. She pretended ignorance, only admitting she suspected Robert left behind something. His eyes hardened, prompting him to murmur about unfinished business. She recognized the threat behind the words. She played along, stating she might have crucial evidence. He demanded she hand it over or face consequences. The wire caught every syllable. The tension peaked when the man signaled another figure at the cafe's entrance. A woman with an unremarkable face, but eyes that glinted with malice. Lucy recognized her from old records. They tried cornering Helen, pressing her to leave with them to retrieve the documents. Helen, stalling, pretended to check the time, her voice shaking. At that cue, Lucy and the watchers rose. The suspect sensed the trap, stood abruptly, and tried to slip away. The woman at the door made a dash for the exit, but the watchers blocked them. A brief scuffle ensued. In under a minute, both suspects were pinned by officers, culminating in a swirl of half-stifled cries and shouts. Helen trembled in her seat, stunned at how fast it all happened, like a scene from a spy film. After the arrests, Lucy introduced Helen to the lead investigators, who confirmed they had matched the suspect's DNA to that of known affiliates from the old East German ring. Both had faked their deaths in the 1990s, living under new identities. The man had indeed posed as a British diplomat in some capacity, while the woman had married into a wealthy European clan. They had been quietly siphoning funds, possibly continuing espionage for new masters. Their interest in Helen stemmed from fear she might possess Robert's final intel, a threat to them. Ms. Delaney felt a heavy weight lift. Robert's quiet war was, at last, concluded. The old players were unmasked. A day later, Lucy informed Helen that she would soon be granted clearance to see the declassified portions of Robert's file. Helen's breath caught. She longed to know the entire truth. In a quiet government office, a stern-faced official handed her a thick folder. She sat alone at a simple metal table, opening the folder with trembling hands. Page after page documented Robert's background, code names, mission reports from Berlin, references to the suspected infiltration ring that had targeted Helen. She saw transcripts of Robert's communications, some describing how he tried to shield Helen from suspicion. She blinked tears when reading a note about him refusing to divulge her personal details, defying his superiors. Another page contained a memo stating Robert had been disavowed for failing to comply with operational directives. Her chest tightened, imagining how betrayed he must have felt, left alone to keep her safe. Then, near the bottom was a letter. It was labeled personal and signed, but the handwriting was clearly Robert's. She recognized the slopes of the letters. Taking a shaky breath, she read, "My dearest Helen, I can never speak these words to you. I have stolen years of your life under false pretenses. I came into your world as an assignment, a mission meant to lure you away from harm or, if necessary, deliver you to those who demanded it. But everything changed when I realized how extraordinary you are. I tried to withdraw, to admit my love, but the agency refused. I refused them in return. You were never to be hurt by my hand. I have spent these decades looking over my shoulder, certain someone might come for you. I could not tell you. Fear overshadowed every day, every kindness. I wanted to protect the world from you. No, my dear. I wanted to protect you from the world. I ask your forgiveness for all you never knew. But I hope, in the end, Our life was real in every moment we shared. Yours always." Helen's tears dripped onto the page. She pressed a hand to her chest, heartbreak mingling with a fierce sense of love. The letter validated everything. Robert truly cared for her, not as an asset or a mission objective, but as his beloved partner. She thought back to their gentle evenings, how he'd watch her with a subtle warmth in his eyes. Now she understood the sorrow behind that warmth, the guilt and vigilance he carried alone. She cried, letting wave after wave of grief pass through her. A few days later, the intelligence task force concluded its final briefing. The arrests had crippled the remains of that old spy network. The men and women behind it faced charges ranging from conspiracy to espionage. The government acknowledged Robert's role indirectly, never publicly naming him, but ensuring the terror that hovered over Helen was extinguished. She was free. She felt relief, sorrow, and a strange emptiness. All her life, she had believed Robert was a mild-mannered logistics worker. Yet behind that facade lay a man who risked everything to shield her from a threat she never knew existed. She found a sense of closure one chilly afternoon, standing by the Thames. Dusk gathered overhead, turning the water steely gray. She wore a coat against the brisk wind. Her reflection shimmered in the dark surface, reminding her of the reflection she once caught in the eyes of a man who had so many secrets. She clutched in her hand a small envelope containing a copy of Robert's final letter. She had read it over and over, each time feeling heartbreak that he had gone to his grave without hearing her forgiveness. But she also felt gratitude. He had guarded her from a world of shadows, preserving their quiet life at great personal cost. She exhaled, letting the wind carry her whispered words. "I forgive you. I love you." In that moment, she believed, wherever Robert's spirit might be, he heard. The water carried her reflection away, wave by wave, as though gently acknowledging her release from the illusions of the past. Helen turned to go, older, wiser, no longer bound by fear or deception. She had learned the depth of Robert's devotion, discovered hidden corners of her own strength, and witnessed a final triumph of truth. For all the secrets and sorrow, there had been real love at the heart of it all. And that, she decided, was how she would remember him. The man who gave her a life built not on perfect honesty, but on an unbreakable vow to protect her. She left the riverside with a calm resolve, stepping into the ongoing current of life, unafraid of what lay ahead. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed the story, give this video a like if you haven't already and subscribe for more.